What's up, everybody, and welcome back to First Fruits of Zion Reacts. First Fruits of Zion is a Messianic Jewish teaching organization, and we have a lot more than just YouTube videos. So if you head on over to FFOZ.org and create an account, you can just read to your heart's content. We have tons of stuff over there from a Messianic Jewish perspective. You can learn what the Bible actually says and means. It's very helpful if that's the sort of thing that you're into. So today we're reacting to part of a debate between two people, Andrew Wilson and the apostate prophet. And I think that this is a debate about Zionism, and we're going to listen to the opening statement of the guy who's not a Zionist, and we're going to react to that. So here we go.
The topic tonight is significantly narrower than I think many people are comfortable with. It's often in the ambiguity that people make emotional arguments instead of using logic and reason, and that's exactly what you will see tonight from my opponent, which you did, which is...
You can just ignore debate bros when they say stuff like this. It doesn't mean anything. You just you insult your opponent to try to get them to become angry and make a mistake. It's fluff. It's fluff.
Why I wanted to narrow the topic to avoid this ambiguity. You'll see from him emotional rhetoric, but no actual arguments, which we didn't. The topic at hand is simple enough. The proposition is, do Christians have some sort of ought to support the political ideology of Zionism? Apostate prophet says yes, I say no. For the purpose of this debate, I will be using the most charitable definition of Zionism, which is the one AP agreed to pre-debate, so that everyone's clear. A movement for, originally, the reestablishment and now the development and protection of a Jewish nation, which is now Israel. Seems straightforward enough, so let's get into it. I will be presenting 4 logical arguments for why Christians have no such obligation, secular or otherwise, to support this Jewish political endeavor. I will order them with my weakest objection first and my strongest objection last. Note, I have many more arguments than the ones I'll lay out tonight, but for the sake of time, I'll just stick with 4. To preface these arguments, I'll explain that Ritvan cannot make the claim that the religion of Judaism isn't part of Zionism. The right of return applies to both religious and ethnic Jews. Israeli law defines Jewish as someone who is born to a Jewish mother or who has converted to Judaism. In other words, the very people group defined as both religious Jews and non-religious Jews, emphasizing all Jews have the right of return. According to legal expert Nancy C. Richmond in her analysis of Israel's law of return published in Penn State International Law Review, quote, while Israel is not a theocracy, the Jewish religion has a central role in Israeli politics because the main purpose of the country's establishment was to create an independent Jewish state, end quote. This analysis is shared by virtually every scholar I could find, pro or anti-Zionist, and is logical due to the fact that if Zionism really had nothing to do with the Jewish religion, it wouldn't specify Jewish converts as being allowed this right of return. Very.
Well, I guess what we're dealing with here, in my opinion, is a sort of a reductive view of Judaism as a religion. And within this construct, to convert to Judaism is just to adopt a religion. Judaism or Yiddishkeit or, I don't know, Jewishness is not, you can't really understand it as like a religion among other religions. When you convert to Judaism, you're not just taking on a religious identity. Jewish identity is multifaceted, if you want to use modern terms to describe it. Is there an ethnic component to Jewish identity? Well, you can be Jewish just by virtue of your mother being Jewish. So yeah, but is it an ethnicity? Well, no, you can convert. Again, is it a religion? Well, not if you're Jewish by virtue of your mother being Jewish. But are there religious obligations for a Jewish person? Well, yeah. So it's a religious identity. There's an ethnic. You can be Jewish by virtue of your ethnic, who's your mother. But I think probably the best category to put Jewish identity in would be nationality, which is hard. It's hard for us here in the modern era. The era of the nation state as defined, by the UN Charter or whatever. That's not the sort of nationality that I'm talking about. I'm talking about a nationality in an ancient sense of the term, where you can join, so it's not just like who your ancestors are, but at the same time, like it is also you're joining almost like a tribe when you join a nation. So there's the construction of the modern idea of the nation or the nation state can sort of cloud the definition of the term nation as we use it vis-a-vis the Jewish people. But that's still the best word. The Jewish people are a nation. And understanding that, I think, clarifies the issue of Zionism right away, because you're talking about a nation without a land, which is a precarious situation to be in. If you're a nation, you don't have anywhere to live. And we do find throughout history that it has turned out very poorly for the Jewish people to not have a place to live. So, but yeah, we can't reduce Judaism to just a religion, and then use that as the basis for further argument. So he may already be on weak footing here. I don't know.
Simple. This is an important preface, as apostate prophets going to argue this as a secular state, and that's simply untrue as a matter of fact. This leads me to argument 1. There is no ought under Christian ethics to support other religions which specifically oppose doctrine and an establishment of a homeland for them. The Jewish religion is acknowledged as being incorrect by every major Christian branch. This includes the Eastern Orthodox Church, which apostate prophet is converting to, as well as mainline Protestant and Roman Catholics. The specific problem here is particularly the denial of Jesus Christ being the Messiah, as outlined in simple language in 1 John 2:23. No one who denies the Son has the Father. Whoever acknowledges the Son has the Father also. In simple terms, if you don't accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, you don't worship the same God Christians worship.
Oh, wow.
Now.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Is that what that means? Wow. He actually thinks they worship a different God. So if you're Jewish and you're living during the time of Jesus, and he's killed by the Romans and comes back from the dead, and you're living in Alexandria or something like that, and you don't hear about any of this, then the next Saturday you go to synagogue, and there was a big one there in Alexandria. All of us, you say the same prayers you pray to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but that's like, it's different now. Like, you're praying to someone else. And if that's not the case, then I'd be interested to know where this guy draws the line. Like, when does every Jew in the world who missed the Jesus thing become literally like I guess an idolater, worshiping the wrong God? So maybe that's enough to explain why that's not what the apostle was talking about there in 1 John. I want to put forward a different argument, because he said basically every Catholic and Protestant and Orthodox Christian thinks along with him in this area. There was a really neat compilation of articles, I think edited by a guy named Cunningham, and a Catholic. I think all the guys who contributed were Catholic, but this guy in particular, I think it made the argument that having the Son, having the Father, like if you believe in the Trinity, which Catholics do, then you'd have to believe that as soon as Abraham has this relationship with God, where God calls him to leave his land and to go to a place which he will show him, he has a relationship with Jesus also, because they're one, like it's one God, right? So, and all throughout Jewish history, like Jesus must be there because there's only one God. And even today, if a Jewish person is worshiping the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and there's only one, like that's one God, then somehow Jesus is there in a mysterious way. And the Catholics have been talking about this since Vatican II, in some mysterious way. And Dr. Mark Kinzer, who I love, wrote a book called Searching Her Own Mystery about how the Catholics are wrestling with these ideas, because it is kind of a mysterious idea. But if Jesus was there with Abraham, I think we can say he's there in some mysterious way with the Jewish people today, which is sort of the opposite of what this guy is saying. But that's from the Catholics, right? So I think like we can say not every Catholic and Protestant and Orthodox all the Jewish people as if they're worshiping a different God. Oh, wow. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is a pretty good delineator, a pretty good, like that's what God calls himself a lot in the Bible. So if that's the God that you are like worshiping, I don't see how you could call that a different God. Personally, especially in the case of the Jewish people. I mean, you just see this extraordinary continuity between Abraham and today's Jewish people. But so I guess that's what I would say about that, although there's probably more to say.
This is also found in John 14:6. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through me. Christ as a Messiah is central to the creed of every major Christian profession of faith. So my first argument concludes, Christians ought not support this heretical for Christian political ideology, and supporting heretical ideology is itself sinful as it violates Christian ethics. The argument itself, premise 1, Christians who support heretical ideology denying the divinity of Christ are sinning. Premise 2, religion
supporting heretical ideology. So this must like follow on from what he said about Zionism being like functionally an expression of the Jewish religion. Who else do we send foreign aid to? I know the U.S. sends foreign aid to all like Muslim countries, and we send money all over the world. We send money to all kinds of people. So I don't know. Some of their countries with state religions that are not Orthodox Christianity or like an Orthodox an expression of Christianity. So is he singling out the Jews here? I don't know. There's a wrinkle in there somewhere, whether I'm able to articulate it fully or not.
Jews reject the divinity of Christ after he's revealed himself to them as the Savior. Premise 3, if religious Jews reject Christ, they are incorrect, and Christians who claim they aren't are spreading heresy. Conclusion, religious Jews are, by Christian standards, wrong and should not be supported by Christians who would be spreading a heresy if they acknowledge Jewish theology is correct or give it support. To reduce it to a much simpler view, if one of my daughters had an OnlyFans, I would still love her. We are commanded, as we were commanded, to love the Jews and the Muslims, but I'm not going to promote it.
Yeah, see, he lumps the Jews and the Muslims together here. The Bible doesn't say the Muslims are beloved by God on account of their ancestors or anything like that. Whereas the Jews are and have been since there have been Jewish people. They do have like a unique covenant status. Paul goes into this a lot in verses that we cite pretty much every time here on First Fruit Design Reacts, like Romans 11, where he says that the Jewish people, even after saying a bunch of stuff about what a dangerous situation they're in for not having accepted Jesus as the Messiah, he ends that whole section of Romans 9-11 by saying, despite the fact that, like, for your sake, they're your enemies, like as regards the gospel, but for the sake of the patriarchs, they're still beloved. So they still have this covenant relationship with God, which is like them being Muslim is a totally different issue. So just because they're wrong, like Paul would say that the Jewish people in his time corporately had missed something very important when they didn't recognize Jesus as the Messiah, and he says, I would wish myself to be cut off, separated from Christ, if it meant that they would come around on that topic. But he doesn't. He stops way short of saying that they're like worshiping a different God, or that they're like heretics, or that their fundamental religious outlook is incorrect. In fact, that he shares their fundamental religious outlook. When we look at the argument over whether Jesus is the Messiah that early, like in Paul's lifetime, we're talking about like an intra-Jewish argument. It's Jews on both sides making the argument, but the Jewish doctrine and all of this stuff could be wrong. It's all Jewish doctrine. Everything you find in the Bible that you base all of your faith on, if you are a Christian, that's all Jewish doctrine. Is all written down by Jews. They're all Jewish ideas. They've gotten, maybe they morphed over time. Maybe they look a little different now. But in the first century, they're all just 100% Jewish ideas. So yeah, we can't make this broad statement that like traditional Judaism is wrong or false. That's going too far.
Argument 2, the pragmatic argument and its response. Ridvan focuses a lot on the pragmatic approach through geopolitics to make an ought for support for Christians towards Zionism, focusing on the anti-Muslim factor rather than the Christian ethics factor. The pragmatic argument from him is simple. If we have to choose to support the state of Israel, who are seemingly at least sympathetic to the West and Christian nations, then we should, or Muslims will dominate the region unopposed. There's no way, and they are in no way sympathetic to the West. This is, in my opinion, his best argument, but it falls flat because it focuses on a false dialectic that relies on fallacious reasoning. In his view of pragmatism, he presents two choices where there are actually hundreds of choices, or more. For instance, there isn't, from a purely pragmatic approach, any reason I can think of for the protectors of Israel, in this case the West, to demand Israel open itself up to tens of thousands of Christian missionaries yearly and give them all enfranchised status. Many, many thousands of Christians would love to live there. This would effectively end the, quote, Jewish state apparatus, which would appease Muslims and also create a dynamic for which Christians could begin their work of converting Jews to Christianity, which is their mandate. Jews would not be persecuted under this arrangement and would still be able to.
Well, that's is that historically viable as a sentiment? When, like, let's prep the ground here for the mass conversion of Jews to Christianity, but we're not going to persecute them, we promise. Is that a little naive?
Freely practice Judaism as they saw fit and would be enfranchised to vote, just like they are in all other nations. They also would have more protections from other nations who have vested interest in their settlers. Will this plan work? I have no idea.
No. He's exploring other options. He's like, what if it wasn't Israel or the caliphate that the Muslims want to establish over there? What if it was Christians somehow went over there and got a foothold? Like, maybe it's like, I guess I didn't fully understand what he was saying. He's exploring. But his premise here is that there's other geopolitical potential realities that we should explore, and whether these things are viable, like who's going to who's pointing the gun, like to make this able to happen, like who's facilitating this mass migration of Christians to Israel, and like who's military, right? Is he just assuming that that like America could go over there and do whatever it wants? I mean, we just spent 20 years and a hojillion dollars in Afghanistan and got nowhere, right? We replaced the Taliban with the Taliban. So I don't know if he's thinking that this is just like a unipolar world still, where America can just go do anything anywhere with no pushback. Several people from the current administration have gone on television and said we're living in a multipolar world now. So we do have to be kind of strategic in the way as a nation that we as Americans that we use our resources, whether it's military resources or whether it's soft power like the like foreign aid. We do have to be strategic. We can't just go do anything. We can't just imagine anything and go do it. There's some strategery involved there. So. I mean, okay, it's okay to dream, but you have to realize you have to be a little sanguine about whether something's realistic or not, I think.
No clue. But to pretend it couldn't be done creates a false dialectic that only two choices exist where many choices exist. Ridvan would have to effectively argue Israel would need to remain a Jewish state from a secular view, which, to quote a thing he says often, that makes no sense. Why does the state actually need to be a Jewish ethno-state and Jewish religious state in order to protect Jews? That's actually rather stupid.
Is it, though? If someone else takes over, what's the incentive to continue to protect Jewish people? I mean, there's a reason there's not that many Jews living in Iraq and Iran, these Saudi Arabia, these Yemen. How many Jews live in Yemen? I mean, maybe there are still some, but there's not that many anymore. Like, does this guy think that just like putting anyone in, just any old group in charge of Israel, that there's going to be just the same amount of freedom for Jews to live and to practice Judaism there? Are we being naive again here? I mean, history doesn't bear this notion out. History instead tells us that wherever the Jewish people go, eventually it becomes very hard for them there and very bad for them there. And that the words of the Torah and the words of the prophets are consistently borne out, that there's not going to be peace or rest for the Jewish people on like a long time scale or on like a permanent basis until they're back in their land. And that's what God promises over and over, that they'll return to their land, they'll go back to their land. I know this guy has not brought up any of that, any of those Bible passages. I wonder why.
All Western nations afford Jewish people the same rights as all other citizens get. Redvan from the Pragmatic approach would actually have to argue that Israel remain a Jewish state from a secular standpoint, which he can't do.
So this idea that all Western nations, Jews, enjoy all the freedoms of any other. Do you have any idea on how short a time scale this has happened, though? Like, I was just reading John Toland recently, and he wrote this in the 1700s, this whole treatise on why Jewish people should be granted citizenship under the as like British citizens. It just wasn't that long ago that they didn't have that. And so is he thinking that like now that they have it, it will definitely be the case that it will be that way forever? Are we being naive again?
As long as the state protected Jews and they were allowed to practice their religion, why would it be a problem if it wasn't dominated by Jews themselves? To formalize this argument to Ritvan, premise 1, Jews deserve a homeland for both ethnic Jewish individuals and religious Jewish individuals. This is his view. Premise 2, the Jewish homeland is necessary because it protects Jews from persecution. Premise 3, the Jewish homeland can't let in majorities of other groups for its own protection. Conclusion, Israel must remain an ethnic religious state with a supermajority of Jewish people. Now you can see here the conclusion doesn't actually follow from the premise. The key here seems to be that Jewish individuals deserve protection from atrocity, but the case isn't being made why they would specifically need a Jewish state to do so. Early anti-Zionist Jews made similar counter-arguments as well. Social dominance in culture doesn't assure prevention from atrocity for Jews any better than being a protected class under a different dominant culture.
The early anti-Zionist Jews, if he means like in Herzl times, that was before the Holocaust, my dude. Asking these people to just go back to Europe, which is what a lot of anti-Zionists would say now. It's a non-starter.
This seemingly can be viewed right now by the conflict going on with Hamas. At least not logically and not pragmatically. Also, we could use accelerated pragmatism here to point out the absurdity of this false dialectic by simply pointing out it could be pragmatic to nuke the entire Middle East, Israel included, and no longer worry about Middle Eastern conflicts and cultures ever. But my guess is most people would rightly state that would be against Christian ethics, which
well, it also doesn't solve the problem if the question is like, well, we want everyone over there, if someone said we want everyone over there to live in peace and peace with each other and be safe and be able to practice their religion and whatnot, how does killing them all affect that? How does killing them all achieve that goal? He's just getting wild now.
Rejects pragmatism for Christian ethics, which Ritvan also should do. Now, even in easily dismantling the pragmatic argument, I will simply now grant it and the false dialectic of a binary choice to simply point out that even if I do, it still doesn't provide an ought for why Christians must support Zionism, which is both hilarious and ironic, but does provide us for an ought for Christians to not support it because you're being presented with a false binary. My last argument is the most important. It combines two arguments together for the sake of time. This argument focuses on the biggest ought, not for Christians, and requires a preface. The first preface is that Israel refuses to disclose if it has nuclear weapons and will neither confirm nor deny if they do, nor allow any inspection of them if they do. Our own CIA has confirmed they do, but they don't disclose it. Second, the Israeli government works hand in hand with the Temple Institute and American evangelicals. Also, there's an organization called CUFI, or Christians Unified for Israel. CUFI has 10 million members, and Israel doesn't even have 10 million citizens. CUFI spreads the false heresy of dispensationalism and hosts charismatic doctrine heresy as well. By Ritvan's own faith, he knows these are heresies. CUFI is on over 300 college campuses and growing. Their stated goal is to educate millions of Americans on these heresies, according to their own website, quote, through our 16 social media accounts, websites, blogs, daily briefs, to bring in groups of pastors and next generation influencers and students to Israel every year. Guys like Charlie Kirk and, dare I say, Ridvan and David Wood and others. To quote, those would be the types of influencers who would be their target. Not saying that Kufi paid for any of that. I'm just saying that would be the target. To reach thousands through Kufi Weekly and Israel Collective videos on YouTube, he's brought in over 1,000 major influencers, including celebrities. All of this is right from their site. Now, what do these people want, you ask? Well, this is going to blow your mind, but this is what they want. They want to assist with the fulfillment of biblical prophecy to bring about a new false Messiah and usher in an Armageddon. Not kidding. Not kidding. Now, the Temple Institute's goal in Israel, using both private and Israeli state money, is to rebuild the third temple and name a Messiah, which Christians know is a false Messiah. Israel, the supposed secular state, gives large swaths of money to the Temple Institute, and many government officials back this undertaking. So remember when I said Christians ought not support heresies? Well, here's why. Right now, this second, major personalities on the right, such as Charlie Kirk, most of the Daily Wire, even perhaps David Wood and Ridvan themselves, who I like, know for sure that any Messiah named by Israel will be Antichrist. They know it.
Antichrist.
Now, perhaps not the Antichrist, but the spirit of Antichrist will be with whoever this person is, and they have to denounce Christians definitionally. Have to. So to recap, the supposed second...
Well, there's a couple things going on here. You know, I'm sure there are dispensationalists out there whose goal is to usher in Armageddon, or at least who are maybe salivate at the prospect. We're not dispensationalists here at First Fruits of Zion. When we think about the Temple Institute, for example, we're a Messianic Jewish teaching organization, and that's like Judaism, like real Judaism, like traditional Judaism. And in Judaism, it's better to have a temple, and there's tons of mitzvahs you can't do unless there's a temple. So it's good to have that. Like we have the same view of the temple that a traditional Jew, like an Orthodox Jew, would have. If you can build it, that's great. Like, it's not always possible to build a temple for whatever geopolitical realities exist, and that's, it's all God's timing and so forth. But like, to have it as a goal, like there's no ulterior motive to rebuilding the temple. It's just like that's supposed to be there. Like, the normal state of affairs in the spiritual economy of the Jewish people is to have that central point of worship. It's a holy place. The Temple Mount is a holy place. God picked it. God showed it to David, said, I'm going to build the house here, and Solomon's going to do it, and it's good. The temple's good. Now, the other thing that he said here, I want to touch on, is that he's conflating two ideas. One is a false Messiah, and the other is Antichrist. So, Antichrist, when you see this figure of Antichrist in the New Testament, it is the Roman Emperor. And if you want to know more about that, and if you want to be assured that this is true, go to First Fruits of Zion's website, FFOZ.org, and sign up for a Torah Club study group for this fall, and we'll walk you through the Jewish eschatology of the New Testament, and explain what the Antichrist is and how he fits into everything there. It's not the same thing as a false Jewish Messiah. Like, there's been, Shabbatai Tzvi, and it was a false Messiah. Bar Kochva was a false Messiah, and there were others. These were not Antichrist. They're just people who thought they were the Messiah, maybe tried to fulfill the prophecies of the Messiah, and they didn't do it. That's a completely different thing than the Antichrist. And it's very important to keep those ideas separate in your head. Go sign up for End of Days. Sign up for End of Days. It'll straighten all that out for you.
The Zionist government is giving money to the religious Zionists in Israel, and get American support to do this with both American government money and direct aid, with mega preachers like John Hagee leading the charge in America with Kufi to back this endeavor to usher in Antichrist. So, Ridvan, I will see any argument you make for why Christians ought to support Zionism, and I will raise you one Antichrist as an ought not. This is the most powerful ought not for Christians to support Zionism, and it is really the one argument I want Ridvan to address, as it's my primary argument. So, the formal argument goes like this. Premise 1, Christians should not support false Messiah or Antichrist. ever. Premise 2, Zionists are attempting to name a false Messiah. Premise 3, secular and religious Zionists are working together to bring about biblical prophecy and name a false Messiah. Conclusion, Christians shouldn't support Zionism, especially not a Zionist nation with an Antichrist at its head and nukes, which it won't acknowledge. False Messiah, head of a state with nukes.
Well, those last words are just percolating into my head because I know a lot more about what the Antichrist is than this guy. Maybe it's percolating in your head too, but I don't feel like I should say any more about that. Yes, it sounds like his strongest argument is predicated on this idea that the Antichrist is the same thing as a false Messiah, and it's just not. So sign up for a tour club this fall, and we'll set everybody straight there on that. Oh, well, that's about all the time we have today. Again, head over to FFOZ.org, check out our other materials, and hopefully, if we can truly read the New Testament as Jewish literature, we can avoid a lot of this stuff, a lot of these ideas that are just foreign to the Bible. It's a prophylactic, right? A Messianic Jewish view of the New Testament is a prophylactic against a lot of these things, a lot of these bad ideas. And of course, this guy would probably say it's heresy, but he doesn't even know what the Antichrist is. So, all right, well, thanks for watching.